We made it official, Madam Chair.
That's fine. We're going to keep this official. Thank you all for taking an interest in being present this evening. Thank you for your time and your efforts, and whether in person, WebEx, or however you're joining us, we appreciate you. And once again, good evening. I'm Linda Shields, and I am honored to be the appointed chair of the Baltimore County Police Accountability Board, the PAB. Welcome to our inaugural board meeting. I've never said that before. Inaugural, but that's what it is. And it's chilly outside, a little chilly in here, but we're going to get started. We have a full agenda. It may not look like a lot of items, but it's a lot that we have to cover. We want to make sure we get as much in as possible. I'm excited, as I said before in our earlier introduction, that what awaits us as a board, as a team, is work that we're all vested in. And with the skills and talents that we have, I think we're going to be just fine. Each of us has taken a step forward in the challenge to restore the public trust between our civilian community members and our law enforcement members who serve and protect us with public safety. So I salute the legislature, the advocates, and community liaisons, and all who invested time and expertise in getting the PAB established and now a living and working administrative body across this state. So before we go any further, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, even in his absence, and hoping that our executive is on his way, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to collectively congratulate him. I'll do that again upon his arrival for his victory this past week. We have prepared, like I said, an agenda that's a little aggressive, but we will do expeditiously and purposefully get through it. So bear with us, and please stop us if we're doing something wrong or going the wrong way, because we're rather new at this. So I'm going to move forward on the agenda with the introductions. I'll start with my own and mention here that I'm a native of Baltimore and one of 7 children. And I mentioned the 7 children part because I do believe that because I was one of 7 in a household of 9, I learned how to share and compromise at a very early age. And that has done well for me over the course of my life, and especially with committees and groups and organizations, I think it's important. So that's why I mentioned the 7. I'm an attorney by trade, if you will, and I'm an attorney in good standing in the state of Maryland. I've been licensed to practice law here in the state for over 20 years. Most recently, prior to becoming an attorney, however, I worked for the Social Security Administration, where I retired after 30 years of service there. And I retired again this past December after serving as an assistant city solicitor in Baltimore City for 12 years. There, I was assigned to the Internal Affairs Public Police Integrity Board for those 12 years, and I was the department's attorney at the administrative trial board hearings where officers chose or elected to have a hearing rather than accept discipline that was offered. So my brother retired from Baltimore Police Department after 20 years of service there. He was a homicide detective. My brother-in-law was a sergeant in the police stop squad, which was a special narcotics unit. My cousin died in service. He was an active member while serving at the Western District. So I've been on both sides with police officers and community, and I really feel a part of that special group of personnel. So I look forward to borrowing from my experience and my related skill sets to enhance the work that is set out before us on this board. And now we'll begin with introductions from the other board members, if you would, starting with District 1, and we'll just go through to our 2 at-large members, and that'll close us out with introductions. So.
I'm Pete Fitzpatrick. I'm the member from District 1.
Hello.
Yeah. I'm the youngest of 6. So
Okay.
I'm the youngest, so I don't think I learned to share right away.
No, you're probably
It was kind of
spoiled.
enforced eventually.
So a brief introduction, if you
Oh,
would.
sorry. So I'm a lifelong resident of Baltimore County. I live in Catonsville. with my wife and my 2 children. I work at Children's National Hospital in DC as a transport nurse and paramedic with the transport team there. I have a background as a paramedic and as a nurse, so I have some paramedic experience with emergency response and the requirements of that. And then also with the kind of the needs of taking care of vulnerable populations. So it kind of dovetails into the importance of equitable policing and service to our community. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And I'm District 2 representative, so I won't be redundant. You've heard from me, so we'll proceed. We'll go on with Mr. Dennis, District 3 representative.
District 3, yes. I'm Bishop Ralph Dennis. I have been married for 54 years, have 3 adult sons and 11 grandchildren. I pastored for 35 years. Currently oversee a network of churches, 122 churches, both here in the country, in South Africa, and in Kenya, where I'll be leaving in about 6 days.
Again?
Yeah, going again. Let's see, I'm a graduate of Morgan State University, was Morgan State College when I went back in the day. It wasn't even a university then. And also of the North Carolina College of Theology, and I'm currently working on a doctorate in social leadership at Oxford. Let's see what else there's there. Not much more than that. That keeps me busy. That definitely keeps me busy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mr. Chambers, our District 4 representative.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is John Chambers. Everybody calls me Jake. It's a long story. Grandfather said I look like a Jake, that kind of stuff. So the short of it is, I can go by either one, John or Jake. I'm retired Baltimore City police officer. I did 24 and some change years with the department. As a child, I grew up in Baltimore City. My middle school, high school years, I moved to the county, which is in Woodlawn, and went to Woodlawn High School. And from there, stayed in the county between Woodlawn and Randallstown. And that's where I currently live now, in Randallstown. With my experience with the jump, as I've said in the past, I would like to be in a position, or I feel I'm in a position that I can give a better perspective in some cases from a police standpoint when dealing with situations and things that may come about that appears to be questionable. I would hope that if it's something that we could work with that's fixing a gray area, I hope I would be be able to give a better perspective of what we have. I am a father too. They're both adult males. One is in Georgia, one is in Howard County. Both are successful and doing well. I am married, and I'm a strong advocate for community. I believe that I came up in a department where we made it a point to know the people in our community. We knew who was who, we knew the good, the bad, and they kind of understood who was who. And that's the way I was brought up. And I would like to see that again as far as our police department here in the county. So.
Thank you so much. Our District 5 representative had to step down for personal reasons, as we've all learned. And so because there are processes that have to take place before a replacement can be put in place, we're awaiting those processes. And so right now we don't have a District 5 representative, but we are functioning as a quorum, so we're okay on that account. So we're going to hope and pray that everything goes well with Mr. Ward, and we are going to now move on to our District 6 representative, Ms. Petersburg.
Yeah, my name is Claire Petersberger. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. Went to Harvard Divinity School, went and spent a decade on the plains of West Texas, and came here in 1999 to serve the Towson Unitarian Universalist Church, and served as a chaplain for about a decade for the Baltimore County Police Department, and One of the most memorable parts of that was going on death notifications for people who had committed suicide. And I am happy to be here, so thank you.
We're happy to have you. Thank you. Our District 7 representative, Mr. Sean Fleur, is on via WebEx. And Ms. Fleur, are you able to give us your introduction, or would you like me to do that for you? I know you're under the weather.
If you could, that would probably be better. Thank you.
Sure, sir. So what I will do is read what we were provided, and it is as follows. Ms. Dawn DeShawn Fleur of Dundalk is a frequent volunteer in her community, including with the Essex Day Festival, Hullabert Middle School, PTSA, Dundalk Independence Day Parade Committee, Eastern Regional Lions Club, and Dundalk Renaissance Corporation. According to our records, she is also an office manager and personal assistant at Santoro Psychological Services in Howard County, which specializes in forensic psychology for high conflict divorce cases. She says, in those cases at work, we do not presume anyone is lying. We also do not presume anyone is telling the truth. So I feel like that is a very important perspective, and she is looking forward to working with us on this board. We hope you feel better. We have two at-large members, Ms. Rolling Ford from District 4.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So I'm the oldest, and I never wanted to share. And I still don't.
You'll listen to many.
Of 4. So there's that. So let's see. I don't even know where to start. So I serve in my community in a couple of roles. I serve as the treasurer of Newtown High School, Newtown High School's PTA, communications chair of the Randallstown NAACP, and I am currently the my HOA president of Kings Park in Birchwood. My day job is working as a legal administrative assistant for the law firm Hogan Lovells. It's an international law firm. Been working in large law firms since 1998, either as a legal administrative assistant or a paralegal. I'm married 17 years. And I'm just excited to be here and start working on it, get the work done. I think one of the things that my parents really instilled in us was, to whom much is given, much is required. And though we were not given a lot, you still are to go out there and do the work. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. And Ms. White.
Yes. I'm a 35-year-old transgender woman out of Parkville. I am a social worker with 5 years of post-grad experience from Widener University, which is a school outside of Philly. My licensed master's in social work for the past 3 years. I work for Adult Protective Services out of the state of Maryland, and I work in the jurisdiction of Baltimore County. So I handle information or allegations of neglect, abuse, and sexual assault on vulnerable adults over 18. I wanted to get into social work because I'm a social justice advocate. Have been for about 10 years, 15 years. And my main hope and goal is to be an advocate and represent the voices of the LGBT community out of Baltimore County.
Thank you. Welcome. You forgot one thing. You have the coolest glasses in the room. So thank you all, and as you can see, we are fortunate to have such a well-rounded, a wealth of knowledge and enormous breadth of experience on this board, and enthusiasm to go along with that. So I'm confident that bringing it all together, we can get the job done. The board is equipped as we are. As equipped as we are, we could not get off the ground without our amazing administrative staff and personnel. So as introductions go, I would like for Lisa, if you could introduce yourself, and then Samantha, and just give us all a little bit about yourselves and what we can look to you for.
Sure. My name is Lisa Morris. I've been with Baltimore County for about 16 years now. In my current role, I'm working for the Deputy Administrative Officer for Public Safety, Rebecca Young, and I'm just here to support in any way that I can. I'm happy to help you guys with anything.
Thank
Hi,
you.
hi everyone. I'm Sam O'Neill. I serve as the County Executive Senior Advisor. You got a lot of emails from me early on and throughout this process. So in my capacity as Senior Advisor, I have a pretty broad portfolio. I'm responsible for our appointments process on behalf of the office. So again, thank you for bearing with us as we're building the plane and flying it at the same time. I am so honored to attend the first meeting with you all. And Lisa, I just want to give so much credit to her organizational skills with pulling a lot of the administrative function of this together. We are in the process of, we will be interviewing some candidates for the PAB Coordination Manager position, which was approved in the last adopted budget. It's stipulated in statute, so there will be an actual staff person dedicated to the work. But in the meantime, we're bootstrapping it with me, Lisa, and our very capable Deputy AO. And if I could, Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce my other colleagues in government at the other end of the table.
Thank you.
Greg, you want to?
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Gregory Gaskins. I'm currently a Deputy County Attorney with the Baltimore County Office of Law. I've been with the Office of Law now for just about 28 years, doing various things, but we basically defend the county and all of its litigation, and not just defend, but also if we need to sue. Prior to coming to the Office of Law, I was in private practice for approximately 4 years, doing a lot of civil litigation, some criminal defense. And prior to that, those 4 years, I was with Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office for approximately 7 years, prosecuting felonies, juvenile matters, the whole work. So that's basically my legal background. And I grew up in the city with the city schools, and eventually moved to Baltimore County when I came out here to the Baltimore County Office of Law.
Welcome and thank you.
Oh, and I am the middle child of three.
I'm the youngest of two.
I'm the oldest of two.
Was the perfect child.
We've got it all.
Bishop, and the perfect child. Was and continue to be.
The angels.
The angel.
No envy.
Meg?
Good evening, my name is Meg Ferguson. My current position is Senior Policy Advisor in the Baltimore County Police Department. I'm also an attorney at Benton County, about as long as Greg has. Done a lot of different jobs for the county for the last 5 years. I became Senior Policy Advisor a few months ago. Prior to that, for about 5 years, I was one of the legal advisors in the police department. Before that, I was actually a lawyer for Adult Protective Services and Child Protective Services. I led the Office of Law outpost down at Drumcastle for the Department of Social Services for about 7 years. And I've done other things for the county in different departments. I'm the youngest of two. I'm always in charge. You're always in charge. I think that's
The baby.
It's a good icebreaker.
This all will become very useful later. You guys are going to see.
It'll all make sense.
It'll all make sense later.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Dave Tribbett. I am the captain of the Internal Affairs section for the Baltimore County Police Department. I have just passed 27 years of service to Baltimore County.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I've been a captain for just over 4 years, and in this capacity for coming up on 2 years. I've worked various assignments throughout the agency in each of my ranks, always in patrol at each rank. When I worked in the Criminal Investigations Bureau in several assignments, worked in internal affairs 2 previous stints as a supervisor, And then I ran the employment section for almost a year. So thank you to be here. I appreciate you all letting us be here and be a part of this. I appreciate you all agreeing to be a part of this. I look forward to partnering with you and interacting. I am one of 5 children, second to last.
Thank you so much.
Do you want me
And I-
to keep going on?
Yes,
the-
would you please?
Yeah, sure. So there were a couple of, on the agenda, there was a section on administrative updates. I had mentioned the staff update. We're looking to interview the first week in December. We know that it's a really important position to get on as soon as possible. So hopefully the interviews go well and we can get that person on as soon as possible with our HR processes. There were a couple of housekeeping items that we discussed prior to this meeting. Lisa, I believe, indicated that all of the county emails are up and running. So I don't know if we have to get them passwords or just we can
Yes.
send out some information.
Mhm.
With my understanding,
I think we're back.
you're back on.
Dawn, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. I started to mention that there was one other administrative item that I wanted to make sure we got in. My read of the statute was that either the chair of the board or a designee by the chair would serve on the charging committee as representative. And what I did was once I spoke to each one of you and really appreciate having those conversations with you. And I looked at what was in the background for Jake. We now know him as Mr. Chambers, and thought that because his background lended so well into a person who would be sitting on that board and with those charges, that I asked him if he would be willing to accept that role as the board's representative on the ACC, and he did agree to do so. Thank you so very much for agreeing to take on that role, and I'm sure you will be a perfect fit for that. So we're going to move on with the agenda, and thank you so much for, you covered everything else that I had notes for. So we're going to go to our next agenda item, and if Captain Trevette, if you're ready, do I have that in the correct order?
I have a little bit more administrative update.
Oh, great.
Before we get to him.
Sure.
Can you put the PowerPoint up?
Yes.
All of her windows open makes me anxious.
What's that?
All of her windows
If it
open.
doesn't work, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Since we made a pretty slide.
Yay.
See if we can get it full screen.
Awesome.
Yes.
And we're gonna, Meg and I will kind of go back and forth.
It's not personal.
There we go. All right. So, just to finish with onboarding issues for the board and then for the administrative charging committee as that is formed. I will mention that, you have a little bit of a luxury of being able to kind of gradually get ramped up and going. Because as you may know, when the state passed all the legislation creating this accountability framework, they grandfathered existing collective bargaining agreements if they existed in police departments. And our Baltimore County Police Department has that in effect. So we had a 2-year agreement. It runs until next July 1st. So the previous law enforcement officer bill of rights, previous policies and rules and procedures for police officer discipline is still in force for the Baltimore County Police Department for the rank, up through the rank of lieutenant. So police officer through lieutenant are covered by that. So any alleged officer misconduct that occurs after next July 1st will fall under the new framework. And so if there was misconduct alleged on July 1st or July 2nd, then it would be investigated. The results of that investigation would be brought to the Administrative Charging Committee if it was a covered matter. And then this board would eventually see the outcome of that case after the process plays out. So in terms of the real meat of your work as a board, the real meat, I think, of your work is to review the outcomes of cases that came through the Administrative Charging Committee. But there will not be a volume of those cases until really it'll start next July, but it has to be investigated before it can get to the charging committee. So you're really looking at the fall. Now, there could be, the sheriff's office is covered by this board as well. So right now, there could be cases, in the works for the sheriff's office. And also the executive core of the county police department is not grandfathered. So they are already subject to the new statewide disciplinary matrix. So if there was an allegation of misconduct by an executive core member, then that would be coming up on a faster track.
Meg, can you define executive core members?
Yes, so executive core is captain, major, and colonel. So that's sort of the time frame and when these things will flow, into this process. So for onboarding, the other things that need to happen for the PAB and the ACC, there are requirements for ride-alongs, for police ride-alongs. I think they don't apply to you, okay. Or maybe it's a Citizens Academy, it doesn't apply to you. maybe both. We'll have to see. So we'll have to check, we'll check on that.
Okay, let me know.
And also since you're gonna be on the ACC, there's training that you require, basically to learn about police officer duties and
And right, the training that's for the administrative charging committee members is prescribed by the Maryland Police Training Commission. And they're offering that around the state, and so we'll find out sort of how that works
I was kind of thinking, I was like, okay, I've been there and done that.
Right, but there are a couple of specific exemptions for former police officers from a couple of the requirements in the state law, but again, that's not something the county's imposing, that's totally the state framework. But the ride-alongs, that you need to do with the county police department, a captain in the chief's office will be setting those up, so we could be in touch with the chair about how everyone would like to be contacted, and we're thinking start scheduling those in December and January, if that suits all of you, but obviously on your schedule. The police department would like to offer the board a use of force training experience, maybe in January, February time range, a condensed, not sort of the weeks, not the many days and weeks of training in use of force that are giving the police officers, but a glimpse into it, including shoot, don't shoot, scenarios. So you have sort of a little bit of an experience of both the training, how officers are trained, and the kinds of experiences that they face. The department presented that kind of condensed training and shoot experience to a number of our elected officials in the last couple of years, and they found it very valuable, and we thought it was helpful to, for everyone's mutual understanding and learning. And then the final thing is, there's a requirement for members of the board to attend a Condensed Citizens Academy, and the department will be offering a 9-week Condensed Citizens Academy starting on April 10th. And we'll get that scheduling information to the chair, to the board as well. And I see the county executive is joining me.
How are you? Good evening.
Good evening.
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Thank you.
That was part of my notes, but congrats.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming this evening, and we wanted to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to serve the community, and not just the community, but across the state of Maryland. We're happy for the opportunity to do work that we believe is valuable to the citizenry and bring in good relationship, the community with law enforcement and vice versa.
Absolutely.
We think we have a great team, and we think you handpicked us quite well. We're going to give you all the credit while you're here.
Well, if I may.
Yeah, that's
okay,
it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Perfect timing.
Well, thank you for your leadership, and thank you all for your service on this critical board. You all have been selected for your experiences, your perspective, and we really believe that, I believe at least, and I think we all believe that we have one of the finest police accountability boards in the state of Maryland. And so for those of you who were new to the vetting process, congratulations and condolences, I suppose. But I know that the county council did a thorough job, and they agreed that we really have the right people leading this work. And we know that having strong relationships and trust with our police department is the most critical thing that we can provide. And you all play a really foundational role in that. So thank you for stepping forward to lead and represent all of Baltimore County residents. I have every confidence that this board will excel in its work ahead. We are grateful for your willingness to serve. We live in a time where I think people are always hesitant and want to not be willing to step up, but this is a moment where you all have chosen to serve, and we couldn't be more grateful. So, I am here to say that our team is ready to be of service and assistance to you. I know you've got a robust agenda, but as you continue the work, please don't hesitate to call on our administrative team, Lisa, Sam, our departmental supports like Megs and others. Great. Office of Law, we're here for you. We want to make sure you're successful, because if you're successful, we're all successful. So just want to again extend my sincere gratitude for your service. Thanks for bringing your skills and expertise again to this work, and we're looking forward to all that's ahead. So
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you. So, Meg, you were finished with that portion of
Yeah, you
your
can go to the
admin
next
things.
slide.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
Of course.
So Captain Treasurer
Busy
will take this
schedule.
one.
Okay, great.
So, just a little bit more about the internal affairs section briefly. We are part of the Professional Standards Bureau, one of 4 bureaus in the department, and I report to the bureau chief. The internal affairs section has an authorized strength. Me as the commander, 2 lieutenants, 8 sergeants, 3 corporals, 9 detectives, and 4 professional staff. And so about complaints, on top of receiving by the board, obviously, just briefly to go through how we receive complaints otherwise. We receive them in mail, people come to headquarters and make a complaint. They can email us, they many times email the county executive staff, and we get them from there, or the chief's office. Inmates at the detention center can file a complaint. They have a process there. We have personnel designated that we go and receive those complaints. We have a website. On our website, we can generate complaints, and there's a process. They fill out their information. It generates an automatic email to our internal affairs email box. The complaints that have come in are vetted, entered into our database system called IA Pro, which is a national standard system, and they're reviewed and then routed through the supervision and internal affairs out for investigation either in my office or out at the command level. So all department members are obligated to receive complaints, and if they receive them out in the field, they vet them with the supervisor and they enter them into a system called Blue Team, which again is a national standard which the department went to in the last 2 years. It's a component system of IA Pro. Chambers is familiar with it. What it does is it allows systematic and consistent tracking across the department. So, me as a supervisor, you're the supervisor, we take complaints, write it on a piece of paper, and then talk to our subordinate, and then it's not tracked. So somebody can get the same minor violation multiple times, and somebody else gets it once, and then so we want to ensure consistency and fairness to the employees, as well as that if there is an issue with how we're conducting ourselves, that we know about that, because there could be a policy violation or a policy failure, that maybe we need to adjust our policy or retrain a policy so that we're understanding what we're supposed to be doing. So specifically for the complaints received by the board, the legislature obviously mandated that the board is able to receive complaints and that they can pass them over to us. We were up and running. I worked with Sam back in July before any of you all had been appointed yet, but the website was up. So the website mirrors is very similar to how you make a complaint to the police department. You can make a complaint online as of today. It will be submitted to the board, and then the board would email that complaint to us. We tested it works, and we have that process has worked for complaints already. The legislation also requires each agency to have a victim rights advocate, is what they call it. Specifically, the law says to designate an employee as a victim rights advocate to act as the contact for the public within an agency on matters related to police misconduct. We have designated that employee through the budget process where we were able to get an additional staff employee. That person is a detective who's assigned to the internal affairs section, Detective Jimmy Waits. And recently the department has undergone an initiative to designate an employee as the LGBTQIA+ advocate. And he also happens to be that person. So he's worked in internal affairs for a number of years. So he's on board and he's excited for his sort of dual roles as it goes forward. So with the complaints and the process is really wrapping up next year, and we'll be able to learn the things and then also keep this other portion of his assignment off we're excited for that. Also, the legislation mandated that complainants and citizens be able to track their complaint through the process. The legislators heard that complainants wouldn't know what was happening with their case. So we worked with OIT to get that process up and running. So that's already functioning. And we didn't limit it just to complaints involving executive court. So any complaint now could be tracked through the system, so the complaint number. It tracks through specific steps in the process that were mandated in the legislation. And they are investigation, charging, offer of discipline, trial board, ultimate discipline, and appeal. So those are the 6 things that are mandated. So we're in compliance with that, and we're up and running. And then just a little bit about complaints. The number of complaints that the agency has received going back to 2019. The total number of complaints that were received and investigated in 2019 were 448. In 2020, 409. 2021, 432. And we're tracking to be just over 400 for this year. So I did want to provide those statistics because a large number of them are going to involve the public, and that's what will then have to be vetted in some way, shape, or form through the Administrative Charter Committee. So, discussing with Meg, we wanted to make sure that there was a recognition of we are a large police department. We have a lot of calls for service, we have a lot of arrests, but just to be to have that number out there, that there will be work because we are a large agency. So.
You can tell them how many calls for service because you got that on.
Oh, sure. So we average around 750,000 calls for service a year.
How many?
750,000.
It's almost a call for service per resident.
Any questions?
So only 400 complaints is pretty good.
That is very good. And to add to that, Meg, only 400 and some complaints, and then once investigated, that number will reduce as well.
Yes.
So that bodes well for
turn out
not to be a valid complaint or exonerated or something.
Is the pattern pretty consistent year after year in terms of the demographics of these complaints?
Generally speaking, yes. Our calls for service, population density, likely be, overlap.
You say that the demographics of the complainants represent a equal portion of the relative to the number of request service. So the demographics of the calls for service match the demographics of the complaint.
I didn't prepare that granular.
Yeah.
Well, I can
It gets on the
any kind of things like that. I'm happy to research if there's specifics like that. Oh, the other thing I want to mention, that complaint data is part of the data dashboard. There's a lot of data that the county executive has directed.
Yeah, I was going to say, in addition to the work of this board, we've really tried to turn things inside out so that we really are transparent about sort of what the complaints are, the number, the volumes, as much detail as we can release to the public, because I think when we do that, we're more likely to be responsive and help avoid those problems in the first place. So I think having the board layer on top of what we've been trying to do internally will all be to the good.
So we push that data over at least quarterly, and it's updated.
Which brings me to my next question: how do we compare to other metrons like ours in terms of number of complaints? I guess in Maryland we would be compared to what? Prince George's County,
From the size of
Montgomery
the
County.
department.
Yeah.
Montgomery County, slightly smaller, Prince George's County. Similar
Okay.
size. I can get some of that.
Okay.
I think we're about 150,000 or so smaller than Montgomery, 75 to 100 less than Prince George's, and then significantly larger than Anne Arundel and Baltimore City.
Yeah.
So
Any other questions for Captain? Thank you for that information. Thank you so much. Another slide?
So, I was asked to give the board a little summary, a little rundown of some of the legislative changes that have been enacted relating to police departments and how police departments operate. I'm gonna kind of skitter through it pretty quickly, but I think as the board maps out its work and you determine what areas you want to do a deeper dive into,
Sure.
the police department will be happy to come in and do that, make that presentation for you. The different officers get complaints are made and officers get into disciplinary problems for a variety of reasons, and policy violations is part of it. So the breadth of policy requirements that they have to know and follow is quite broad. One of the changes that was made in the new legislation affects stops, both traffic stops and other stops made by police. At the commencement of a stop, absent exigent circumstances, a police officer has to display proper identification and provide name, ID number, the name of the agency, and the reason for the traffic stop or other stop. But again, exigent circumstances, you may or may not be able to do that. And our policies have all, so this whole page of things are things that the department has implemented. They're all in place, we have policies adopted, and now all the officers are responsible to know it and follow it. We changed the display that police are doing when they make stops because the search warrant changes included a requirement that executing a search warrant, you have to be displaying your number. And our name tags did not have the officer's number on them. So the department, thank you, Mr. County Executive, bought new name tags for the entire police department. so that at their stops they will be displaying the number as well, because we needed every officer to be able to serve a search warrant. So we sort of did it all at once.
Meg, not to stop you, but
Yes, ma'am.
that may sound like something small, but that's major.
Okay.
And especially with community relations and stops and things of that nature. Any contact with officers is welcome, that a civilian is able to get that information just by seeing it and not have to request it, and then there may or may not something else arise from that. So it sounds like something minor, but from my experience, that's a major plus. Yeah, either way.
So Smith, if you're a Smith, their ID number is unique to them.
Yes.
They used to have initials. And
Yes.
So that feels like, well, it feels less personal, it just says Smith. But everyone's, change, everyone gets used to change.
Sorry about that, but thank you.
No, that's fine. Body worn cameras, the state is expanding, we're requiring departments to all have body worn cameras. As you may know, Baltimore County Police Department was one of the leaders in the state in it was an early adopter of body worn cameras, an early expander. County Executive has allocated additional funds, had already allocated funds to expand it further in the department. We're currently working through a whole lot of difficult policy issues with that expansion, because as you might imagine, under detective work, the different roles, it's patrol. Patrol's been fully equipped for years. Expanding beyond patrol is interesting and challenging. So we're working through that process, but we are expanding the deployment of body worn cameras beyond patrol already, and it's well in advance of the timeline set by the state. And the state is actually leaving it to departments, policy, how far to expand within the departments. So a number of Maryland departments, it sounds like they will not be expanding beyond patrol, but our department is beyond patrol.
And we didn't have a release policy prior to our administration. There wasn't really a policy on when and how to releasing the footage, which was another change that we're very proud of. That there now is a process in place for that.
Search warrants, the state law made a number of significant changes relating to search warrants and also no-knock warrants, a number of new requirements and restrictions relating to obtaining and executing no-knock warrants, including that the state's attorney has to sign off on every no-knock warrant, not a designee. The state's attorney herself has to sign off. There are requirements about the execution and body worn, etc. And the department our department had actually already, at the time that the state was putting together its new requirements, had already had a long project underway to beef up the department's policies and search warrants. And so when the state finished its work, we were already ahead of that. Our search warrant policy meets or exceeds the state requirements. We have an extra level of supervisory approval that is more than what the state requires in the process, in an effort to try to avoid all the issues and problems that can certainly occur. There are state level reporting requirements for reporting search warrant executions and also for SWAT teams. And the department has, OIT has created systems to help us do that more efficiently. We were doing it by hand until we were ready to get that up and running. But that reporting is all being done. A major a major undertaking for Maryland Police Departments was the new statewide use of force policy that was enacted. The Attorney General's office issued a 37-page memorandum explaining the new statewide use of force policy. 37 pages, single-spaced. At the end of which the conclusion was, but it won't really be definitively interpreted until there are court decisions. So that was interesting. The department, we created a committee of sergeants because sergeants are the ones that really get down to how things work, and did a lot of work in the department to analyze the department's policies, analyze the department's training curriculums, and match it up with all the advice from the Attorney General's office and with the statute. And actually, I'm proud to tell you, came to the strong conclusion that we already met or exceeded the statewide use of force statute. And more important, by working it through the department in the way that we did, including required meetings with all lieutenants, going through all of the training academy curriculums and explaining, going through all the factors, convincing everyone in the department that had to have confidence that they in fact have been trained appropriately and were operating within that framework, because it is a crime to violate the Maryland use of force statute. And every police officer in Maryland had to sign individually by July 1st of this year, I understand and have been trained in the Maryland use of force statute, and I will comply with it. So we were faced with having to put that in front of people for signature, and in fairness to them, they couldn't just be told, yeah, no, you're good, you can sign this, right? They needed to, this is a very important thing. So the department spent a huge amount of time and effort, and came out, and we did have no problems with anyone feeling comfortable signing that. So we have implemented that. If the board wants a detailed presentation about the use of force policy, we informally submitted the training curriculums that we circulated to the department members, et cetera. We'd be happy to provide that, at one of your future meetings or for your background information. The thing about use of force that did change for our department was reporting. Previously, the department required separate, specific reports about the use of force only for serious uses of force. So if you used an instrument, if there was an injury or a complaint of injury, etc. So only that sort of more serious cases. Grabbing someone and pulling them out of a room is a use of force under the Maryland use of force statute, but it was not, I didn't hurt him when I pulled him, I didn't use an object, right? I just pulled him. We would not previously have had a separate report file. Well, now all uses of force have to be reported. So we've changed our reporting policy and are requiring the use of force reports to be filled out for those lower levels. But the more robust, we call it packet, like the whole more material you have to collect for serious uses of force, that continues, those continue, but for the lower level where there's no injury, instrument, etc., you just do the form, and it doesn't mean you've done something wrong. right? I mean, you frequently need to use that lower level of force so that so you can get the situation under control, get people separated, whatever it is, effect the arrest, so that you don't have to then go to elevated levels of force. So those are numbers for use of force reports, are going up because these previously, I want to say unreported because they were all recorded on body-worn camera because most force is done by patrol. And they're explained, there's an account in the incident report, this is what happened, this is what I did. So it wasn't that they weren't reported, but they weren't filling out separate use of force form. Witnessing officers also are required to report, to file a report. And so if I pulled Greg forcefully out of the room and Captain Tribb's watching, he has to fill out a report. It's mandated.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. This is a mandated report, mandated reporting both by officers that do the force and by witnessing officers. And we have had to enact policy that draws those lines. It explains what your responsibilities are, that says timelines for when these reports have to be done. Supervisory responsibility for approving and reviewing the reports. So they review it at several levels so that if something looks problematic, the supervisor can elevate it for investigation, that sort of thing. And also for what isn't witnessing. If you're on the perimeter way down there, at this point of line where you don't have to file a report, you can sort of, you kind of know you got pulled out of the room, but sort of we try to find a reasonableness, place, for this. So, this is a new, this quantity of reporting is new for us. So, but we've tried to lay that out. So again, we can, share those specific policies with you, if that's something that you want. The other big change affecting Maryland police departments is, I'm sure you're aware of that, the Independent Investigative Unit in the Office of the Attorney General, which investigates all police-involved deaths. We have unfortunately had a couple of those, and we actually had the first one.
First, it's involved shooting.
First ever shooting.
It was a crash. Happened in Baltimore County, but it didn't involve Baltimore County.
Right. It wasn't our department. And we have, in every case where it's been involved, we have worked very cooperatively with the Attorney General's office. They have been complimentary about the communication and the access that our department has provided. We haven't had any problems with that. We do call whenever there's something that might be in their jurisdiction. We have made some calls where they have said, no, we're not coming and handle it, but we have erred on the side of calling, and the department, will continue to do that. So there have been other legislative changes. I have a large spreadsheet. This has been quite a thing, but those are the highlights, I think, that would be of most interest to the board. Next slide. And then there are some legislative changes that we are still in the process of implementing. The new disciplinary matrix, which is both what the punishment should be, et cetera, but it's also how you go about it. It's the whole thing. That applies, it does apply currently to our executive corps. We have not had to actually use it on any of them as of yet, knock on wood. It will apply to the rank and file for misconduct occurring after next July 1st. There are new requirements for processing complaints. The ability for this board to receive complaints, as the captain said, is already set up and in place. We are still trying to digest all the changes in the new disciplinary matrix and figuring out how to redo departmental policies and processes and forms to comply with it, because there are a number of things that are different and language things that are different. For example, counseling is something that across Baltimore County government, counseling is not discipline. Counseling is corrective and et cetera, et cetera. Well, under the new disciplinary matrix, they chose to make counseling the first level of discipline. So we have to change our words, and we have to figure out new words for non-disciplinary.
Corrective action.
Corrective action. Yeah.
Excellent.
Right. Yes, that's one of the ones we're probably going to use. So we're working through trying to do that. Another thing that is interesting and has obviously been considered before in disciplinary decisions, but now it has to be done in a formal way with outside people who don't know the people, if you will, is this mitigating and aggravating factors as part of the matrix. When you look at the statewide disciplinary matrix, they'll say, okay, this misconduct occurred, it's this level, but then depending on the aggravating and mitigating factors, your punishment might be this number of days, it might be a reprimand, or it might be losing leave, it might be suspension, right, a range of punishment, for that thing. Well, the mitigating and aggravating factors requires us to mine out of personnel files and other places to get that information, right? Which you would have had if you're doing it internally to your organization. You sort of know a person's history, you have a person there who knows their history, you can kind of get that. Well, we need to, the internal affairs section is going to, as further investigation, not only investigate the incident, but then they're going to need to bring that background material about that officer to the ACC to provide these mitigating and aggravating factors. So we're in the process of figuring out where all those are, because it might be in your personnel file in the department, it might be in your commander's, your supervisor's file. Historically, we've collected the sort of data persons and oopsies, during the course of the year, and then when your annual review is done, those get kind of factored in and just sort of mentioned and summarized.
So your reviews are annual, we did quarterly, they call them green sheets, and you do quarterly. And the information you're talking about is incorporated in that.
It's incorporated, and then those individual things are discarded, but then you've got to pull up all those and find them, and how well are they described is going to probably vary. But in fairness to the officer, and also in fairness to give a clear picture, we have to figure out where all this information is and how to access it in a systematic way. So we're
Just trying to understand, could you give an example of a mitigating factor in that?
So, an aggravating factor might be something like, it appeared to be an intentional violation of policy. And a mitigating factor might be, you're my supervisor, and you told me to violate policy, and I did it. So, I violated policy, and I probably should have known better. Those are two that jump out, but they're prescribed, and the disciplinary matrix was developed by the Maryland Police Corrections Training Commission, which is representatives from across the state, law enforcement representatives. So, and it's available, it's a public document, it's online, and they went through and they went back and forth, and they had different iterations, and we had representatives participate in that process. So it's available online. It's 10 pages, but there are a number of mitigating and aggravating factors.
So an example that where we would have to go mining for information would be if someone's accused of discourtesy, saying terrible things to a citizen. Well, it would be relevant in terms of determining what their punishment should be if that's found that they did that misconduct. Do they have a history of discourtesy, or do they have a history of courtesy? They might have some of both. Or only, it might be they've had some praise for how courteous they've been, and then they have this one bad day. But the ACC needs to be given that information. So we are working on figuring out a systematic way of and a fair way of presenting it. Yeah, but that it could, and I think the aggravating factors it needs to relate to the misconduct. So someone having a lousy, track record of departmental car accidents isn't going to be relevant to the discourtesy charge. Sure. So, and then the other things that we are still in the process of implementing, and because they're just going into effect, there are a number of new mental health services requirements for officers. Some of them are mandatory, some of them are voluntary, some of them are in the range. So after a critical incident, there's certain circumstances where an officer has a mandatory, you have to go talk to them. And then there are circumstances where the department is obliged to make an opportunity available to the person. So we're working through that. There's also new screening that's going to be required next year. We're working through how to, and it's a mental health screening, which I didn't put up there. We're working through that. There are new physical agility tests that will be required starting next year for current officers, running, climb, that sort of thing. So, some of those things we're in the midst of. Those are coming due, and we are in the process of getting those squared away. That is my last slide. Again, this was kind of a quick bounce through things. The police department is, as the executive said, appreciative of your service, and we will be happy to respond. Anything that you want us to bring to you in the future.
Thank you, ma'am. And I would welcome any questions or concerns or topics that once we leave here or as they come to mind, and just send them forward so we can pass them on. And I think they would make great topics and opportunities for other meetings. So that the more enlightened that we are, I think the better and more comfortable we'll feel with once we get these matters in to investigate, then we'll feel better about approaching.
One thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about the internal affairs section, they mentioned during the independent investigative unit, the internal affairs section responds out to all police involved shootings. And the independent investigations divisions, their job is to conduct a criminal investigation into the matter for internal affairs and criminal charges to be filed. Once that's completed and reviewed by the State Attorney's Office in each jurisdiction, then the administrative investigation is handled by my office. So I just want to make sure, if you want a question on where that happens and how that happens, that's one of the duties that we undertake in our office.
And that's why some of the administrative investigations are long in time after an incident occurs, because his office can't do anything until the criminal matter is resolved. So that's going to be challenging.
Fortunately, the statute covers that as well, because that had been an issue for years where the complaint was that it took too long, it's not fair, but then the statute covered that situation by implementing that not until the criminal matter is, then your clock starts ticking, starts tolling against the administrator. Great, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
There was some discussion about a Maryland Public Information Act.
The news report, yes, sure, I can address that, because I'm in charge of that.
Thank you. I assumed you would be.
Sure, so yeah, I'm overseeing the department's Public Information Act stuff at the moment. So as of October last year, the state law changed, and the personnel records exception was no longer applicable to certain police disciplinary records, right? Because as a civilian, if my personal record, you can't have it as a public matter, right? It's a personnel record. But the police have been carved out of that with some, but not totally, like with some exceptions. So the department has been releasing internal affairs records since the law changed. The department has been regularly and frequently supplying police disciplinary records through the state's attorney's office in criminal cases whenever it's requested by defense counsel. The department has been sending them in response to subpoenas and court orders in civil cases, so divorce cases, all kinds of protective order cases, whatever. Those have all been going out. The category, though, to access through the Public Information Act, the department has to comply with the right of the subject of the record to be able to file a reverse MPIA. And you can only, and this is clear guidance from the Attorney General's office. And the only way you can do that is if the person knows that the thing they want to object to is about to be released. Once it's released, the damage is done. There's no way to undo it. And there is dispute, and I've seen them trying to resolve it, dispute over what is covered and what is not covered in terms of what is releasable. And if it's a technical violation, it is still protected, absolutely protected as a personal record, and the department is prohibited from releasing it. There are people are disagreeing about what constitutes a technical violation. The state police has put out a whole list, and it is long, and it is consistent, and you know. So the much easier way to go is what the department has adopted is actually the same thing Montgomery County has adopted, which is we're gonna say, Officer Gaskins, we're getting ready to disclose this. You have 5 days to tell us if you're gonna file, to object and file a reverse. And that's a short period of time. And either he goes to court, either he says, you made a mistake, and I go, oh, you're right, we didn't take out this health information about you, we should have redacted that, take care of that. Or goes to court, and then a court will decide whether it's a technical violation. So, you know, now that we can get it, you know, honestly, then all these other policy work, you know, the abuse of force statute was our absolute priority this year. We had to get that done, and I will admit that this policy took a backseat. It's done now. We've started moving those you know, public requests. They will start to go. But I want to assure you that they have been going out the door since last year, since the minute the law changed. They started going out the door in criminal cases, subpoenas, orders. You know, that has not been slowed down.
I have a question about, you mentioned that there's a new mental health screening piece.
Mm-hmm.
Is that new for recruits? Or is
That's
that?
for existing officers.
Okay.
There's gonna be a requirement for going in for a screening, and we're talking to the department's psychological services provider and trying to figure out, you know, exactly what that is going to consist of. It's not a fitness for duty examination. It's not that. It's a more of a, and Craig's like, oh, please tell me it's not. PTSD.
Bad enough.
You're looking at PTSD over here.
I'm having this.
Yeah, it's more in the line of it is more along the lines of a check-in, assessing check-in kind of thing. It's intended to be supportive of officer wellness. Chief Hyatt has done a lot of work on officer wellness. Recently, we have a whole section devoted to officer wellness, commanded by a captain. We have peer support, officers in peer support roles who respond to critical incidents and follow up after critical incidents and who are available. There's an app available to all department members on the phone with access to what it's called.
Cortico.
There you go, Cortico. Would you like to describe the Cortico app? You may go better than I do.
It has resources available, signs, symptoms, things to check in, and for self-evaluate, and also links to the department and other employee assistance program providers.
And we've just this year brought in a actual clinical social worker who is on staff and available to department members. And that's really important because as good as the peer support volunteers are, they're not clinicians and they don't have confidentiality. Right. We actually have a policy prohibiting our peer support officers from taking notes because we can't protect the notes because they're not licensed clinicians.
And the clinician actually, so he's embedded with the police department, he's actually a Cigna employee. So he's not actually a department employee, but he has full access to things, so he's licensed clinical social worker, so his conversations with him are protected and with no direct line of information back. Right. Because he's not an employee, so it's worked well in the jurisdiction.
And we have a chaplain corps, which is a resource that's a long-standing resource for the department, and that continues. But we've tried to build out more ways for department members to get support and to get help.
Does that inure to their families as well as just the officer alone? Because sometimes what happens to them happens to their families.
The clinician, to Cigna is available to family members as well. Our employee assistance program is available to families as well.
Good.
Cortico app is available to professional staff, sworn members, and then also their families as well. And there's,
That's awesome.
it's
That's
a unique thing in that, the only thing that's tracked is like numbers. So it's just an aggregate number of how many people in each category used it, and that's all that really our commission to report back to how many people use the services.
We all have the same password. They can't individually track.
So,
Right?
Yeah,
I know, how rare is that?
It's really good for people like me who forget passwords
I know.
every day. What is it? Can't keep track of passwords.
yes, it takes away the worry because people are worried, you know, that if I self-disclose something,
Sure.
you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
to get back and you know, be treated differently.
Sure.
Obviously, if you're threatening harm to someone else or
Yeah.
direct harm to yourself,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's just, you know,
That's good.
this is concerning me or this is bothering me. Well, let's go forward and
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for the wealth of information. Mr. Gaskins, if we could hear from you very briefly on anything that falls under your purview, or where you'd be giving assistance to the board, what we could come to you for as far as law is concerned. And I know we mentioned that we'll be coming back for more information about the Opens Meeting Act and things of that nature, but if there's anything that you want to speak on.
Right, yeah, I you can come to me for anything, any questions you have, but I made a note of what we should probably contain in the reports.
Sure.
That's probably something that I'll look into. The other thing is the meeting, the minutes, because you know, as long as I get that we're recording, but there are times when, from what I understood, we're recording and then posting.
Yes.
Somehow. So there may be times when some things may not want to be posted.
Sure.
So I guess in those instances, we can, stop recording?
Yeah,
Technically,
announce
yeah.
a closed session.
Yeah,
And
and
then
then, yes.
start the
Then
recording.
pick back
once
up.
Right.
it's- Yeah.
Okay, that was my thought, so.
Well, you don't actually have to
Yeah.
close the session, you can stop recording.
That's
and-
true.
Or just
and
stop recording,
Stop
yeah.
recording and just keep track of your work through minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not the same as closing the meeting. right?
Well, I mean, I assume citizens can attend.
I think we have some on the line
Yeah.
currently.
Right, I mean, to say closing the meeting, if you
So,
close the
yeah.
meeting, that would be a different thing, and you'd have to do that in compliance.
Right, so we would have to.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Just depends on what
But
the
is there
agenda
the
is.
equivalent of executive session rules? I mean, if the boards don't know.
What you would think of as executive session, like in a private board, would be closing the meeting to the public. And there are certain steps that have to be followed in order for a body to close the
Close
meeting. So that, the training, you probably
Like
wanna just
legal
have,
questions.
yeah, you have to have advance notice, you have
Sure.
to announce that there's gonna be a closed
The
session,
topic
et cetera.
or something.
So,
Yeah,
so the chair
exactly.
may want to just plan a
Sure, we
training
have
on the
that down.
Open Meetings Act so that everyone is
Yes.
comfortable and aware. I think that's a good, a practice typically recommended to the county boards.
Exactly.
I need a note for that too.
Okay. Okay.
And I did check, also, I just did a preliminary
Mhm.
check. There's nothing specific about the way the proceedings or whether they're minutes, but
Mhm.
the statute just says that, that the board will establish.
The board will establish the procedures for record keeping by a police. Board that does that? No, the local governing body has. You will need to look back at the county law to see
Okay.
what's set forth in terms of responsibilities.
No glasses? Glasses in your pocket?
It's Friday, so, right, we'll give you a pass.
They never leave my face.
That's perfect. I love it. Okay.
May I just ask, are there
Certainly.
norms to county boards in terms of speaking with one voice? Who gets to board to the public, and how does all of that work?
Well, you know, because I know, yeah, we kind of touched on it last time. When you're out, I think the members need to be careful how you speak on your own as an individual versus on behalf of the board. So I just think it needs to be clear that an individual is speaking. If you want to weigh in on some incident that happened, you know, involving the police, it just needs to be delineated that you're giving an opinion on your behalf, not speaking on the board. If that answers your question.
But who does speak on the board's behalf is actually my question.
Whoever's
To
designated.
the public.
Whoever can be designated by the board to speak.
I would think it would be deferred to me as chair.
That's what I'm thinking. I just
Yeah,
want
that's
clarity
under,
on that.
yeah.
Yeah,
And-
or your designee.
Or my
is what I'm
designee, just
saying.
like I designated
Yeah, I
Mr.
mean,
Chambers.
it's a board
Sure.
selection.
The important thing, and that was going to be an item on my summary of things to go over this evening, is that we all remember that everything done, all deliberations and business taken care of here and discussed here is the board's business and not personal business, so that if in fact, even as chair, if someone would ask me, so they'll know better than to ask me, but I just don't discuss the business of the board. And so if there is a question and you're not sure whether you're offering your personal opinion or if what you say may be taken as an opinion or words from the board, position that the board is taking, you're better to say nothing and then advise us of what information you received. And because we have to deal with everything being disclosed, and that information will be made known to the board as well, and what, if any, response would also be made known, but not individually respond to those things. I think people really respect the fact that you tell them that I'm not in the position to discuss matters of the board as speaking for the board, and I think they will appreciate that and respect that. There are just such a myriad of things that people are going to be asking us now that we're on this board, that we all have to err on the side of caution and know that it's better to be silent and defer, get things fact-checked or checked before we say anything to anyone. It's better, it's harder to take something back than it is to not, just say it at all. And it's no harm in waiting, even when you have to or feel the need to respond for something. Waiting is always a better option, in my opinion.
Sometimes when you feel a need to respond.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. Because anything you say
Yes.
is going to be, you're a member of the board,
Sure.
so it's going to be, your name, who's a member of the PAB,
Yes.
said this, and it's, confusing as to whether or not you're speaking on behalf, and it's going to be taken as.
Sure.
as
Then it'll
speak.
become a matter of interpretation, and it's something we don't need.
That's right.
Yeah, appointed members are considered public officials, so you're treated as such. To your point, right, of what you say publicly.
I like that phrase, no comment. That works real well.
It's so simple too.
It works real well.
No comment.
So, do we have any other questions for Meg or for the captain? I'm overwhelmed. I mean, the information that you guys have brought this evening has just been more than I had ever expected, and so thorough. You may have thought your list was small, but no, I don't think so. The information was absolutely well received and appreciated.
I guess the only question I would have, since they represent the police department, is how do we go about, or should we go about, making contact with our local precincts to get to be recognized or known, or create some kind of relationship?
We can certainly arrange that. The captain in the chief's office, who is going to arrange your ride logs,
Okay.
will be in touch with you about that, and maybe that would be the easiest thing that.
We should wait
have them
for that
also
time?
Well, you don't have to, I mean, you
Okay.
can certainly make yourself known if you want, but the captain will facilitate that. Some of you have more than one precinct, because you're by councilmanic district, so you have multiple precincts that your district includes. includes. So maybe we can assist you with making sure that, you know, you've got your exact, you know, list of precincts, if that's something that you're interested in doing, we can certainly facilitate.
So I'm curious as to what what you would be wanting to accomplish by making yourself known to the district.
Well, since we are representing the accountability board, I think I like being proactive. I'd rather he knows me before there's a problem than to know me when there is one. If I'm representing that precinct and there's a situation at hand, I'd much rather see a familiar face that I've already been acquainted with than see an unfamiliar face.
So I don't know if we'll be seeing faces in that, you know, that kind of contact. So I
Okay.
guess I'm just not clear beyond the major in charge of that district, or, you know, knowing who we are and having contact information for each one of us because we represent that councilmatic district. If anything beyond, once we do go in for ride-alongs and things of that nature, where whoever's in charge that night or has to know who we are and why.
Okay.
That it would need to go beyond. I'm open for discussion, but I'm just kind of not clear on why that might be a need to go beyond.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
have a suggestion.
Yes,
Maybe
please.
as part of your, as the board gets going and ramping up, maybe the board would want to plan outreach to the police community relations councils in each precinct.
Yeah, right.
And have a board presentation to sort of communicate, so the board could be communicating to each police community relations council, you know, how the board functions,
Yeah.
finding out the complaint
I-
process, that kind of thing, and
Okay.
but something that the board is sort of organizing and structuring so that each precinct receives the same.
There is, at the Citizens Academy, the commanders of all the precincts come on, I think it's the first night,
Awesome.
before they're welcome, so you would get to meet them, and then they would know, they know which council districts their precinct covers, so then you could have that interaction. And then the Police Community Relations Council, each precinct has one, but then there's an executive board too. So if you wanted to, as a board, maybe meet with the executive board, versus having to try to meet with multiple meetings, because they meet different nights, different weeks and all that. So there's the executive board. Just a suggestion and how.
I think it's a great suggestion. Does that answer your?
Yes, it does.
I think that's, both of your suggestions are excellent in that not only will we get to meet them and they meet us in a larger setting, it would be information being given one time or by one speaker or one presentation rather than I say it this way and you say it that way and we don't meet at different times with different people. So I love the Community Relations Council presentation. And that's another, I think, that really serves a dual purpose because then that's the public side of knowing who we are rather than just the police department side of knowing who we are. And then we see us working as a team and they're brought in as a team. I think that will absolutely ratchet up, you know, the concept of us wanting to be transparent and give equal attention to both sides of the equation. So I like that community.
Did you want to say?
So I think I was just comment saying, in so we're in the same district, District 4, and we're well known by like the police officers in our area, and just want to make sure that was mentioned. We, for me, I work with them on a lot of different stuff, so.
You know, my
making
view
sure
of it is it's pretty organic. It's not one of those situations where we
Yeah,
went and said, hey, we
before-
cover this board. They know us from the community, so it's nothing, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Way before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's-
and this board is gonna be looking at the outcomes of the
Sure.
cases that have gone through the hands of the ACC.
Right, right.
So it isn't, you're not gonna be looking, you know, you're not on trial work for officers in this instance. You're on a.
Right.
It's more about
Outcome
policy
basis.
advisory.
High altitude,
Yeah,
high
high
level.
Trends and.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, the policy is tracked.
We provide that information to the exec team on the police report. So it's like at least meeting with them and saying, here's the information we found.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I think that the goal is to provide, you know, input and guidance and.
Sure.
And I think as you all are sort of listening and, you know, kind of digesting and hearing, okay, well, we want more information on X, Y, and Z, that's when, you know, Linda can work with us, or
Sure.
once the dedicated staffers on board, to build out the agenda. So
Sure.
you can get more, you know, Sheriff Fisher couldn't make it tonight, but the sheriff's office should have a similar presentation on how they handle their complaints and everything else. So, you know, we want this to be what you need to focus on the mission. So policy trends, certainly reviewing the outcomes when the time comes, things like that.
Again, I think communication piece is just going to be key, you know, and that we be open with each other and discuss things as they come about. Because if one person's thinking it, somebody else is probably thinking the same thing. So the more we discuss our thoughts and ideas, and the more we realize there's more that we don't know than we do know, I think the board will get strengthened in that respect. I appreciate that. Appreciate all comments. So, any other questions, anything on your mind, any other things that you might want us to make sure we don't overlook?
When does Chief Hyatt's last, or when is she no longer?
December, yeah.
Never mind. Okay.
My next question is going.
Okay. We do have to discuss our next meeting. So we want to make sure we don't leave here and forget that. So we went out with the poll, and we got the results of the poll, and it appears that the majority of us are available on, check this. We had 6 out of 7 available Monday afternoons from 12 to 2. 5 out of 7 available Wednesday evenings from 6 to 8, and the same number were available on Friday afternoons from 12 to 2. We don't ever want anyone to not have opportunity to be at least some of the in-person meetings, and so we were trying to, as difficult as it is because of everyone's varied schedules, it does seem like on Monday afternoon from 12 to 2, that's when you would not be available, right, Ms. Roman?
That's correct.
You would not be available for in-person, but it's possible that you could make some of those meetings via WebEx or mobile.
The Fridays 12 to 2, you are
Likely to be in person.
So I guess we need to find out who the 2 persons are who couldn't be available for Fridays. Anyone here, one of the 2 who would not be available for Fridays from 12 to 2?
And what's the frequency? We're
Okay,
trying to
that's a
meet
good
once a
point.
month, right?
At least once a
At
month?
least once a month.
Yes.
Okay. So I could probably work out once a month, any dates you set.
Were you one of those 2?
No, I was trying not to be. No,
It's a quarterly
It's
requirement.
Yeah, we're required 4 times.
Right,
But
there's a lot of
especially
content,
because we have a lot to do and learn and catch up on.
So, I mean, I can work it out. That's not a problem. I would prefer 6, whatever, you know, but I can work out anything. So, no, it's not a problem because the frequency is once a month. I can pull that off. It's not a problem.
Is it worth redoing the poll? I mean, I guess I'm not sure. I'm sure you identified a couple of dates for next month. Is that right? And then got holidays.
No, I asked in general.
Oh,
which
just in
days
general.
got it. Okay.
work best.
I understand that December's gonna be an issue, only, you know, the time and, you know, because of holidays.
Sure. So if we narrowed it down and just asked specifically for December, that might be helpful just so we get over that hurdle.
Yes.
And then we can come back and revisit what our ongoing regular meeting day and time will be.
I think that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
If you allow people to like to work out, or to do a 12 to 2 during a work week, you know.
Sure.
things like that.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll send out another poll and we'll get just for December.
Can you identify at least like a week, 1 week where, because it's not really set up where you have to choose like blocks of time and on specific days. So can we choose at least like a week? You know, what does this week look for you?
Is there any week for anyone here that is, other than Christmas week, which in part would be Hanukkah, would
Yes.
dovetail into that time? Or those two, that week and a half? How about the beginning of December? We're almost there, right? So, like the second week,
Yeah.
The week of the 11th.
the week of the 11th? What's that?
The 11th.
Oh, the doctor's appointment.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Me.
The week, is the week of the 11th good for everyone? And we'll come back with the,
Yeah.
whatever that day
That's
is.
amazing. I get back on the 10th. I'm Kenya.
Just in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have to bring souvenirs. You can't keep going to Kenya and coming back.
Or some good food.
And just telling us that you just came back, you know. Yeah, bring something. Okay.
Tell me what you want.
So we're going to work with the week of the 11th,
11th, yeah.
December 11th. Okay.
Is it the 12th?
Yeah, Monday is.
And Monday's the 12th. Monday's the 12th, yeah.
Right, the week starts.
Sorry, my business, we work
Okay, I'll send out the poll for that.
Okay, great. So we'll send out the poll for that one and we'll get that.
Sorry.
Madam Chair, is there any
Yes, ma'am.
specific presentation you would like from the police department for that meeting?
That's a good question. I think out of our discussion this evening, what you mentioned about the new use of force requirements seemed to have been of interest and could be something that we could all learn a lot from.
That'll also be a writing session, because, or at least we'll be starting to prepare what we're going to write by the end of the month. So that session will be very heavy on what are we actually going to accomplish by the 30th of this month. So,
Yes,
just want to make sure, yeah.
yes. I'm sure we covered it.
Do you want us to send materials to the board before that meeting? You know, we have the written materials that we provided to the police
That would be
officer.
very helpful.
We can give you we can basically, I mean, what was provided to police officers that they would feel comfortable and willing to sign, you know. Like I said, there's a 4.5 minute video, training
I was
video.
gonna ask
on
about the
what's
video.
forced, what's not
Okay.
forced. There's a four-page informer kind of explaining it and trying to explain basic concepts in English. There's a 37-page memo from the Attorney General's office. There's the department's policies. Now, so we can
That
send,
sounds
we have a
great.
package that was what we provided to the officers.
Mhm.
So we can provide that to you in advance of the meeting. And we can bring over someone from the training academy to kind of walk through the training PowerPoint that they went through with lieutenants. So we could
Sound
do
good.
that. That's really a prepared materials.
Okay.
And it would give you a full face dose of what our officers were required to absorb.
I think to Kara's point on, again, sort of follow up, I know Captain took notes on sort of maybe demographic data and some other questions
Yes.
that the members had.
Mhm.
That could be sent to the members too, because again, as you're preparing maybe narrative and some other information,
Sure.
that might help inform what you want to include.
Well, in terms of the complaints, that dashboard is already up. You can explore that yourselves, it's up on the dashboard, and you can be prepared with the choosing from that for you. So,
Any of those kinds of statistics and data would be very helpful to give us a better idea, conceptually what's actually going on and what has happened and how that information has been used and can be used.
okay, we can certainly look at that, I kind of don't want to promise that for your next meeting.
For the next meeting, we'll do the use of force and the policy and the video and have the presenter come
Right,
from training.
Right, if we could focus on use of force for your next meeting, you only have a 2-hour meeting and you have other business that comes up, so I think that will swallow that meeting.
Okay.
Honestly, it's a lot of material, but we can take on board your request for more data
Sure.
about the others, and we can look to bring that to you for a future meeting, if that's acceptable.
Sounds great. And then by then, we'll have information as to what our report will look like, as you mentioned before, and what we know it won't be as detailed as future reports will be. But we know that this first December report will have to have something in it, so we'll know what we plan to have in it, so that we remain in compliance with the statute, even if it's at its minimum.
There was nothing I saw that require any particular.
Nothing particular, yeah,
Yeah,
but what
item.
would look nice?
Yes.
Which
Make
could
it
just
there.
be your formation and what you've done.
Right, that's what I was saying.
And
you know,
recap what
I mean,
we've discussed and
Just
just,
be a 2-page report.
sure.
Right.
Do the dashboard so they can see it.
Can
Sounds
you email me?
Just Google Baltimore County dashboard.
Can I jabber?
Come up with a whole set of dashboards
Yes.
that the county executive has posted. There's one on code.
So I'm gonna have
There's
Lisa
a
pull it
prime
up so you guys
dashboard
can see it on the screen.
Okay,
too.
great, see
Yeah.
what it looks like.
Yeah.
Shoot.
How much juice do you have, Lisa?
I think we're okay. We should make
Let
it.
me just email you, so my jabber's not working out.
Cross my fingers.
Pull that up, technology.
And on it, when you go to the dashboard, there's a way to submit a compliment, submit a complaint, and then you know the use of historical data, and then complaint data. It's all one page.
On screen.
That specific set of data. Then it's all different departments in county government have different things as recommended by the county.
And we should mention that we also have a process to submit compliments, and we do receive them.
Did you have more than 4?
That's fun.
So if you click on view,
There it
yeah.
is.
There it
Right,
is.
so it says submit a complaint. It's use of force data on one side, complaint data on the other side. And you can select different.
And essentially, it's interactive, so to speak. You can squish the timeline, you can highlight different charts and different pieces of it. So as you move it, the top numbers change based on a different timeline you've indicated.
You can do the year.
Yeah, on your own computer.
You can't, that, it's all.
That's the sense.
But this shows you, when you find it, that's when we look.
Oh.
No, thank you.
I'll email this out to everybody.
No?
No, it's not.
Okay, good.
Captain,
Yes.
once the sunset sort of concludes for July, will this dashboard reflect things that are tagged for ACC? Like, is there a way we might code what will be under review by the ACC potentially? I'm thinking ahead of sort of just data consumption from a public standpoint.
I'm sure Moen could.
I'm sure Momin could do it. So
Yeah.
Momin Abukir is our chief data officer who built out these dashboards, but I think it might be.
That's an excellent point, though.
Yeah,
To
just
be
a
able
way
to
to put it.
differentiate the data.
Yeah, and we,
There would need to be, because that's something that we are developing in-house, is we have to be a differentiated case which is required to go that route.
Right.
So,
yeah, we can talk to Momin about that too.
And police officers will still be able to get in trouble for things that don't go to the ACC.
That's right. Yeah,
I guess
that's right.
they go in and sort and all
Yeah,
that kind of
right.
stuff with them.
Right.
But that's an excellent question. Anyone think of any other topics, not for the next one, because we're good for December. If you can't think of anything tonight, feel free to always feed them to me or to, yeah, she mentioned that as
Yeah.
being one in the future. So
Yeah, I think we're
anything
gonna try for the next meeting.
for the next
finish
one.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would make sense, because if there are current amount of people that can have complaints filed against them, that would be where we want to focus. An amount of time from now until July 1.
When everybody.
Yeah.
And if there's anything you all need ahead of that sheriff portion of the presentation to help him prepare,
Okay,
just,
send it.
yeah, send it to Linda and we can get it set.
And the designated victim rights advocate could come to one of your meetings and introduce himself. You know, we want him to do that.
No shortage of topics.
No. That's good.
And he is
I like
also-
the
he
idea
is
also.
designated as the department's new LGBTQIA
The departments.
liaison, the new LGBTQIA
Okay.
liaison, and is both to be, he's looking both community liaison and also internal to the
Internal.
department, and he would be delighted to share some of that. We have a specific policy that was adopted 2 years ago, on engagement with, encounters with non-binary, transgender, etc. individuals to in addressing issues about transportation and detention and that sort of thing. I don't want to deep into the weeds. We're supposed to get on policies, but that is, I know that's something you said you guys have a specific interest in, and even if you just want to, have that for yourself, we're happy to share that.
One other topic for the future, I think we touched on it, would be the wellness and mental health.
Absolutely.
So we know what is made available to the officers and what may add to that. I have nothing else on my notes that I added to, except any documents or forms that we needed to complete tonight. Please make sure you turn those over before you leave, especially those who haven't had your passports or licenses copied so that they can put that information on the records.
I don't have a check.
You don't have what?
They ask for a copy of a check.
That's
Oh, I'm gonna have
fine.
a check with me.
That document just take with you, and if you can scan it back to me, that would be fine. And if you don't have access to a scanner, then we'll make an arrangement.
I can scan a copy
Okay,
to you.
perfect. Okay, all the rest of the documents should stay, or should be filled in tonight, if you could. So we can get them over to HR and all that good stuff.
Lisa, are there any other members of the public on?
Yes.
There are. Do you want to open it up, Madam Chair, to the folks
Sure,
on the-
if there's anyone, would they send a question to your chat, or you would just unmute them?
Yeah,
Unmute
they
themselves.
can't speak, they're only viewing, but they're not.
Okay, got it, okay.
Could they send a question to
Yes.
chat?
Yes.
Okay, so at this time, if there is a member of the public who is still currently on, if you would like to send a question or comment to the chat, and we'll make sure that the group discusses it before we leave.
Oh, and we did have one comment. You should interact with your precinct so they understand your role and build a relationship with the community for understanding and a relationship.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
But the way we do it, I think, was a good.
As a group.
As a group.
Yes, okay.
Okay. We will definitely do that.
Are there any questions coming in?
That's it?
That's it?
Your driver's license.
Yes, I'll get them all at once after we stop recording.
So if there is, ladies, is there anything else that you have on your agenda or notes that we didn't cover? I have a check mark next to everything on mine.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So again, I can't thank you all enough for this inaugural meeting. I think it's gone over quite well. I think we've learned a lot about the tools we have and the things we don't know that we want to know. And we certainly know there's a lot of information out there, and we're grateful for everyone who came this evening and lended your support as well as your knowledge. And we look forward to continuing this relationship and getting the job done for Baltimore County. So if there isn't any other further business, I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I would say don't eat a lot, but it's not so. It really defeats the purpose. Enjoy your Thanksgiving and your families, everybody. Stay safe, and we will see you all again at our December meeting. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.